So, you're interviewing a candidate who is vying to become the next digital project manager on your team. They're ticking a lot of the boxes, but they're stumbling a bit when you ask about the technologies they've worked with in the past. Was it built in PHP or in ASP? Can't remember. Was it hosted on the cloud or was it on-prem? Not sure. Was it caching that helped the speed issues, or was it the CDN that made all the difference in the end? Last week you interviewed someone who could probably write a whole statement of work in Python, but they kind of lack that bedside manner required to ever let you put them in front of your clients. Are you being too picky? Does the person you hire even need to be all that technical? How could it be so hard to find someone for such an in-demand role? If this is something you can relate to, if hiring a DPM is starting to feel a little bit more like catching a fly with a pair of chopsticks while riding backwards on a horse blindfolded, then keep listening. We're going to break down the must-have ingredients to look for in a good DPM and how to sculpt your team into your A players. Hey, thanks for tuning in. My name is Galen Lowe with the Digital Project Manager. We are a community of digital professionals on a mission to help each other get skilled, get confident, and get connected so that we can deliver projects better. If you want to hear more about that, head over to thedigitalprojectmanager.com. All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us on the DPM podcast. My guest today is a longtime digital project manager who has spent over 20 years working in digital agency contexts, as well as just technology in general. From humble beginnings as a Microsoft certified systems engineer to building large-scale e-commerce and marketing websites for large national brands, he has run the gamut of the digital world. Today, he is the VP of Professional Services at Oomph, located in Providence, Rhode Island. In his spare time, he is a disciple of the culinary arts who is currently hell-bent on mastering his barbecue brisket recipe, and is also one of the co-organizers of the Boston Digital Project Manager Meetup Group. Folks, please welcome Matthew O'Brien. Hi, Matt.
Hey, hello. Thanks for having me. It's really good to be with you today.
It's great to have you on the show. Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting.
It's good to talk project management with another fellow PM geek.
Absolutely. We're going to nerd out today.
Yes, absolutely.
But first, let's let the folks know about yourself. So you've made an impressive ascent from digital project manager to becoming a member of the leadership team at Oomph. And I imagine it's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So I thought I'd ask, where do you get your inspiration from? What inspires you to keep plugging away at it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Definitely blood and sweat, probably too few many tears. For me, it's a drive to just understand things. I really like to understand how things are made and how they're built. The how and the why, and it's not just in technology. Like on the side, everybody's got their hobbies, right? I'm way into, like, right now, woodworking. It's super interesting to see how things are physically built. I'm super motivated when I learn more about the kind of the under the hood, the tech, the how, the why, and just, being able to see the great things that, the teams that I'm working with and have worked with in the past that we're able to build and to create together. It's awesome. It's awesome. I'm really inspired by other people.
So we're going to get you to make some DPM chairs for us eventually.
Oh, nice.
Maybe some nice rocking chairs. One thing I wanted to ask, inside or outside of work, is there anything that you've stumbled upon recently that's just making your life super awesome? So
yes, and it is the Mr. Chicken covers of pop songs on YouTube. It's some person with a rubber chicken that is just squeezing that thing in and out, and the chicken singing along with the music. It's hilarious.
Is it in pitch, this rubber chicken?
Pretty close, I would say.
It's very impressive.
Pretty close, yeah. And you have to check out Bohemian Rhapsody. It's hands down, I think it's the funniest one. Although I will also say, Take on Me, Aha's Take on Me is pretty good too. So.
All right, so why don't we get into it? Let's talk about hiring and nurturing digital project managers that are or can become in some way, shape, or form technical. So just to clarify, not necessarily a technical PM per se. That's a bit of a different thing. But we're going to be talking about how you find folks who are willing to become technical enough, I guess. The folks who are willing to immerse themselves in technology and in the process, own things, get things done. You yourself, you're someone that I consider to be quite technical. You are legitimately a systems engineer who became a project manager and who is now a team leader. So you've written code, you've migrated databases, you've created something sort of like Acquia Site Factory before Acquia Site Factory even existed.
Yeah, kind of.
So I think you're a pretty technical guy, and arguably a lot of digital project managers and a lot of our listeners may have come at it from that other direction. So from less complex digital projects to increasingly more complex ones. And I suspect that your expectations might be a little higher than the average bear when it comes to technical prowess as you're sifting through that candidate pool. But it's also why I'm really keen to get your perspective on how you hire and grow good DPMs. How would you describe the role of a digital project manager on your team?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. To boil it down to the basics, I consider them to be the owner, right? You are the person that owns the project. You need to own all the details to the project. You are, not that you're solely responsible for the success, but I feel like, you shoulder a good amount of that responsibility to help drive and make that project a success. And, so yeah, you definitely, you own it. You're client facing, you're talking to the client. You're, also inward facing, working with the team, and you're working with, strategy, design, account management, development, engineering. So, you've got to own all those different pieces, of the project and kind of bring them all together.
Yeah, that's a fair point. At Oomph, you are end to end. So even, I kind of framed it at the beginning as technical equals like development savviness, but not necessarily even that. Like knowing and owning each piece of that life cycle, whether it's in design or UX or development or testing or pre-launch, it's kind of that sort of definition of technical and the willingness to become technical. I guess for our conversation, we mean not just code and building stuff, but the whole shtick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I mean, all of those other pieces, we do use technology to do those things. So yeah. And, I mean, you take design as an example, like you should be familiar with the technical, terminology and aspects of design, right? So, to me, that's important to understand what our UX and our design team is doing and what they're talking about and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Oh, I like that. And I think that maybe brings me to my next question, which is, what is the most important thing that, in your eyes, a good DPM brings in terms of value to clients and also to the team?
So on the client side, I look at project managers as they're professional technology translators, right? So again, because you're both inward and outward facing, it's the ability to kind of take the complex and to be able to distill it down into something that is understandable for the clients, so that and then conversely, you're able to talk with the client and understand their business goals, and then help to kind of bubble that up to the technology teams, the design teams, etc., and help them to understand what it is that they need to achieve, what the outcomes are that would help to make a project successful. I mean, when I used to. I shouldn't say used to, I still have a resume, but when I was circulating my resume, I liked to describe myself as someone who thinks in zeros and ones, but speaks English. So, that ability to be able to think technically, but still be able to explain it to a client in a way that is going to be understandable to them. But two, I think, when you understand the technology, and just how complex and difficult things are, I think that positions you as a project manager to much better communicate the value that your company is bringing to the client and bringing to the project. To them, they might think that what you're working on is not all that complex. They just think about the end outcome, but there could be so many things that have to be done to get to that point. And so if you can help your clients to understand all that goes into it, all the process, all the technology, everything that you do to arrive at that end product, I definitely think you're helping position them to really see the value that the company as a whole is bringing.
Yeah, I really like that. It's like a distillation. Like the skill is yes, being the messenger, yes, being that proverbial Babel fish, but also distilling the important things in a way that they'll get value out of.
Yeah, and then back to the team. I think for you, when you understand what someone's doing on a regular basis, how many projects? How many of us have said to somebody like, why is this taking so long? Right. Well, if you understand why it's taking so long, that gives you a little bit of empathy, right? When your engineer, your developer says like, oh man, I'm really struggling with my local environment today. Like, and for me, a couple of years ago, I was like, man, I keep hearing this from people over and over again. Why is this so hard? You know, I've built websites and all I did was set up like, MAMP or something like that. And I was up and running. So I was like, I'm going to see how hard this is. And then I decided to just like clone a repo and try to set my local up running Lando. And I was like, wow, this is actually really complex and hard. And I ran into error after error after error, but it built empathy for me that like, yeah, this is not easy stuff. It's difficult. And, yeah, so I think empathy is an important thing. I also think that when you speak the same language, like it's just going to it's going to improve the communication between the entire team. Like if you know what they're talking about, you know, you're not going to have this crazy blank stare on your face, and you know, or like somebody says something to you and you're like, okay, and you walk away, but you really don't get it. Like if you can communicate better when you're speaking the same language, you're apt to have better results and accomplish more together as a group. And then lastly, I feel like for the team, when you're a little bit more technical, I feel like you can kind of be that first line of defense, right? Like you're tier 1 support, so that you're kind of knocking things down, answering questions for your clients, and letting your team kind of focus on the more important things that they really should be spending their time on. And I think when you do that for them, I mean, your team is just going to love you and really appreciate that. So they're not getting interrupted throughout the course of the day. So there's a lot that, you know, good DPM brings to the table.
That is a lot. Yeah. So for anyone out there who's a digital project manager and isn't sure the value that they bring or how to communicate it, that's probably a good start, which maybe brings me to a loaded question. Yeah, it's a loaded question. So my loaded question is, how technical does a DPM on your team need to be? So, in other words, what do you expect a DPM to be able to do to drive your projects to successful delivery? So, for example, do they need to know how to write code?
Maybe. So is it an absolute requirement to know how to write code? No, of course not. But I do think that it's important for them to understand a little bit about how code is written. And also, I think I would like them to have some pretty good basic working knowledge of like HTML and CSS. That's really important, you know, because again, you think about that like tier 1 support type of thing. I would like you to be able to pull something up in a browser and right click and inspect element and look at it and be like, oh, you know, this is a little bit off. Or like, maybe do a quick in-browser mock-up to show a client what something might look like and get their buy-in on that general approach. Like, I think that's really important. And I do expect them to know some of that stuff. But do I expect we work with PHP and JavaScript and, you know, do I expect them to know how to write code in those languages? No, not at all.
Is there anyone on your team currently who has access to Git? Who can commit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a bunch of us that actually have access to Git and do that. Some even contribute to the PR process a little bit. You know, for simpler PRs, like like if it's a SaaS change, like I have a couple PMs who have no problem going like, yep, that's good, approved, ship it. You know.
Nice. Yeah. I love that. How do you go about, coming back to that sort of tier 1 model? I'm thinking, I've seen both. I've seen those project managers who think they can do tier 1, but everyone on the team's like, no, don't speak because you're going to say the wrong thing, versus building that trust. So people are like, oh yeah, that person knows what they're talking about. We've shown them how the process works. They're going to do fine to answer, you know, these questions, and then they'll escalate to us when necessary. How do you sort of get people on your team to that point where the team trusts them and they trust themselves to, you know, not do something that's completely outside of the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think we certainly don't just throw them into the deep end of the pool and say, figure it out. You know, the way that our organization is structured, We do actually have teams that are dedicated teams that work together all the time. So they're dedicated cross-functional teams. So they get used to working with one another, and they develop a rapport and a relationship with one another. So I think, much more rather than, bouncing around like I'm working with this group for, this project and then this group for this project. There's a rapport and a level of trust and comfort that gets developed there over time. But, having a technical person on a call with you, to be able to kind of see what they're doing, and to be able to be there for support for a while is definitely helpful. But in terms of like getting them comfortable, we strongly encourage that our PMs try to level up, if you will, from a technical ability side of things. So we firmly encourage people to do some training. We encourage them to, build a demo site or something like that to like really try to like dive into the coding, not coding, but the technical side of things and really start to learn some of the technology.
I love that sort of learn by doing. And then also, what you're saying about like having a technical person on a call, and folks who have worked with me will know that I will always say, oh, so-and-so will keep me honest here, but I think the answer is blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, sort of. And then you kind of learn for next time.
Yeah. And to me, one of the things that I always encourage people to do is from the project management side is like ask questions. Mm-hmm. I'm probably I'm one of those people who's really annoying because I ask a lot of questions. Don't do, and tell them to do it. Like A, do it respectfully, and B, don't do it in front of the client. Like, because you don't want to come across sounding like you're questioning, the solutions. But hey, take 10 minutes after the call and kind of ask your engineer. So like, why did you recommend that? I'm really curious. What's the benefits to this? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, definitely be inquisitive and be curious and want to know why developers and engineers are making the recommendations that they do, because you'll learn a lot from them.
I love that kind of zeroing in on the why.
Yeah.
Because that's generally speaking, A, what you'll have to explain to a client or a sponsor or stakeholders, and B, it kind of helps that core understanding for yourself. One of the things we talked about in the past was kind of knowing and understanding technical terms. So like the lingo as well. What's your take on that? And what are some of the expectations you have of folks on your team to kind of speak the technical, what am I trying to say? Use the technical terms correctly.
Yeah, no, I fully expect them to do that. So for our org, currently we're mainly working with Drupal. We have some WordPress clients. We're starting to get into some decoupled stuff with like API first headless CMS tools. But I 100% expect them to know the difference between a module and a plugin. If you say that you're going to install a plugin in Drupal, I'm like, no, because there's no plugins in Drupal. It's, they're modules. Plugins are in WordPress, or like, content type. Content type is a Drupal term. Custom post type is a WordPress term. So like, it's important. I know it may sound like it's a little thing, but I think it's important to understand the terminology, because I don't know, it gives me confidence, and I'm sure it would give the client a little bit more confidence that you do in fact know what you're talking about. So definitely need to learn the lingo, need to learn the terms, and not just learning the lingo or the term. You actually need to know what they are.
Yeah, fair. And also, I mean, some of our clients now are savvy. They know what all the terms are. They've studied up on Drupal, and they were probably put on the project because they have that knowledge. So
yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you have in-house. I mean, sometimes we do like staff augmentation projects where we're working with like an in-house dev team. So
there you go.
Wow, yeah, you really got to know what you're talking about there.
Is there somewhere that you send someone immediately after they make that mistake? They're like, they say plugin, you're like, go to.
No, there's no like virtual dunce cap that they have to wear on a Zoom call, right?
But what about like where to learn, where to like skill up on some of these? Yeah, go to the corner.
Exactly. Yeah, no, absolutely. We for Drupal, we have a Drupalize Me account. So we absolutely encourage and offer that to new hires to go through that training. It's fantastic. It's really there's a lot of like short chapters that you can go through pretty quickly to learn some of the terminology. So that's a really good resource for Drupal. For WordPress, I mean, there's a million things out there. So yeah, we do in some cases too. You can use like Udemy or like lynda.com, or like there's some LinkedIn training too that will let people do.
Let's dive into hiring.
Okay.
So when you're hiring for a digital project manager specifically, what are some of the things that you're looking for? Are you usually looking for someone who's kind of turnkey and can just like plug in, or do you specifically look for talent that you can foster and sculpt and grow them into what you need them to be?
Yeah, so it depends. Sometimes you are looking for more of that turnkey option, someone who's got a little bit more experience, got a little bit more, techie in them. But in some cases, we may not have the budget for it. So it really does depend. But the one thing that I will say is, again, we're mostly at this point a Drupal shop, right? And it's kind of a more niche area of development. So there's not a ton of, that I've come across anyway, resumes that I've received, not a ton of people who are like, yeah, like all I do is manage Drupal projects. Right. So oftentimes they're not a completely turnkey anyway. So for me, it's not as important. And the other thing to keep in mind too is technology changes. When I started, we were mostly a WordPress shop. So, and like I said, we're moving in the direction of working with other tools. Tools change. So it, as long as you're a technically savvy individual, I think that's the key thing. And what I look for is more on the quality side. Who are you as an individual and a person? I mean, I think that's the key thing. Are you willing to learn? Do I see kind of like that, roll up your sleeves and figure it out mentality? That's the thing that's the most important to me.
I really like that. And how that kind of shapes out in a resume. If we're talking about the process when you're kind of going through that stack of resumes, is there anything around that kind of jumps out at you that says, yes, I am a roll up my sleeves kind of problem solver?
Yeah, I think so. And it's less about like the million bullet points of your responsibilities that you had on your resume. One of the things that I like to see is more around the accomplishments, that you made as a project manager. So was there some really like challenging thing that came in and you and your team, you figured out how to get it done? It's less about like, I managed 10 clients and I was blah, 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 blah. Like it's just a bunch of bullet points of the core responsibilities of things you did. We know what the core responsibilities of a project manager are. So what I want to see is accomplishments. What are some really big, cool things that you did and that you accomplished? To me, that's going to jump out at me way, way more and make me think like, wow, this person can really get stuff done, and I would love to see some variety too, if possible. If it's all the same thing, then, that doesn't necessarily tell me that you're a roll up your sleeves and figure it out kind of person. That means that maybe you're just kind of more like we're stamping widgets here, if you will. We're cranking out the same thing, and it's more the process that you're following than your thinking ability that is what's making things successful.
And would you say variety as in sort of types of projects and maybe scale? Yeah,
absolutely. Yep. Can you do big things? Can you do small things? Yeah. Have you worked on with different tools? And again, doesn't have to be Drupal. I don't care. But you've worked with a variety of different platforms and tools. Absolutely. I think that's very, very critical. Cause again, that shows me your critical thinking skills and your ability to just dive in and figure out a platform.
For the hiring managers listening, I thought I'd ask, do you have like a silver bullet favorite question to ask in an interview that kind of helps you understand whether a candidate will have that roll up their sleeves, get it done problem solving mentality?
Do I have? No, I don't have a silver bullet necessarily, but what we do use from a question perspective, but what we do use is a tool. Okay. If I can talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. So we use a particular tool in our hiring process called the predictive index, PI. And what that is it's kind of like one of those personality tests that you take. It's not too different from like a DISC profile or something like that. I think Myers-Briggs is another one. Mm-hmm. And so this is a measure of like kind of who you are as a person, your like formality, do I need to follow rules, or like, can I work in ambiguous situations? Like, am I looking for, am I super outgoing and able to like meet new people, or am I kind of reserved? And by using a tool like this, what we've done is, it has something called a pro. And what a pro is you say, all right, for this particular position, these are all the qualities that I think would make this person like the ideal candidate, right? And so then and we did that with a couple of different people in our organization. And then somebody takes their test, and then you can compare them and say like, how closely does this person align to our pro, if you will? And it will give you a guide like, oh, they might struggle in this area. This is where they're really going to excel. This is how you can help them grow. This is how you can help them get better at their job. And for me, what this does is it takes a little bit of the gut feel out of the hiring process, and it uses a little bit more data and science. So that way, if you've got like 2 or 3 top candidates, they're all pretty equal, all pretty even. This is going to really help kind of make that decision for us.
Whereabouts in the process does that sit? Is it like screener and then please fill out this, the predictive index assignment and then interviews begin, or is it later?
No, so we screen a little bit. We'll do an interview, and then we'll have them fill out the PI, and but we could do it a little bit earlier because the PI tool can actually give you suggested interview questions as well, based off of this person. Huh. So I think that's pretty cool. You could use it a little bit earlier, but I typically don't. I usually just kind of reference it towards the end of the process.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing I had in my head is, are you usually looking for the same thing? Like, is there a mold, or is it a mix that you're looking for, or neither?
I'm looking for the same thing, kind of, honestly. Yeah, I mean, we can all be different people. And again, you don't have to match that pattern perfectly. Like, we have a lot of great PMs on our team, and everybody's a little bit different, right? But I'm just looking for you to have like pieces of those things that, kind of, I think are going to make you great.
Makes sense. Oh, I like that. For our hiring manager listeners, what are some of the things, like the big cardinal sins that you've seen from DPM candidates that you're like, okay, no, I'm not going to hire you. You just said that thing, and no, I can tell just from you saying that you're not the right fit.
Don't fake it. Like, if you haven't worked on Drupal, don't say that you have, right? Again, going back to like, oh yeah, like I'm super familiar with all of, like, the plugins and stuff. Like, it's like, come on, just say like, I've never worked in it. Yeah, I've never worked in it. I've worked in this system or that system, but like, I have, and I understand at its core how CMSs work, and I'm pretty sure I can figure this one out, right? Just be honest. That's what we're looking for.
And I think, like that honesty, and also like the person who's going to fake it is probably the person who's not going to ask those questions to better understand what the team's doing. Because they're going to be like, just fake it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we talked about the predictive index. I know you like to add a little bit of science to that once you've kind of gotten down to that short list of candidates. But when you're getting to that short list of candidates, what are some of the most important things that impact your decision to add them to that short list? Like, what are the key ingredients that you can work with? What are the things that makes you think, this person is made of the right stuff?
Yeah. Definitely, again, it's about it's not so much about the skills, but it's about like your abilities and your critical thinking your critical thinking abilities, right? And like, again, those bootstrappy, like, I'll roll up my sleeves, I'm going to figure it out. I can pivot, I can learn. One thing that I forgot to mention that I wanted to mention to you was, like, during the interview process, one way that we can get a good sense for people's ability to do this is, we actually do role playing in our interviews, which is really fun. And I tend not to tell people about it in advance. So I just kind of spring it on them. Because I feel like as a PM, right? Like, sometimes you have advanced notice as to, like, difficult situations, and you can kind of prep for it. Like, oh, you want to talk to me? Okay, what do you want to talk about? All right, cool. Let me get prepared for that. Sometimes you're on a call and, like, boom, like, client just drops a bomb in your lap, and you've got to be able to quickly handle that circumstance and figure out, like, what you're going to do. Maybe you need to pivot. Maybe you need to figure something out on the fly. And so what we do is we've written up these scenarios. They're real from circumstances that other PMs on our staff have dealt with in the past. And essentially what they have to do is I let them read the scenario, and it may be like, okay, you're on a call and you have to let the client know that you're asking for more budget because of XYZ. Or, like, you're on a call and the client just says, like, hey, you remember that thing that I was supposed to get you, that content? Well, I can't get it for you for another 3 weeks because of XYZ, but we still have the launch on time, right? So they get to read through the scenario. They can ask me questions, which is also, I think, really key. Like, if you read through that and you ask me no questions, like, I don't know, that tells me something a little about your thought process.
This is before the scenario begins. It's like, you have an opportunity to be
exactly.
Like, what exactly does this? Okay, yeah,
exactly. And I tell them that all the time. Read through it. Ask me any questions that you have now, and then when you're good to go, what I want you to do is literally, pick your hand up to your face, say bring, right? And you're calling me and I'm the client. And sometimes I'm nice and sometimes I try to be a bit challenging, but it's fun to see how they react. Yeah. Because, again, it's about your ability to kind of think on the fly. And I think that gives me a good indication as to how you're able to think in difficult circumstances.
And what I like is that part of that sort of quote unquote test in the role play is that asking questions before the scenario starts. I think that's a really cool tip for folks who are, designing their interview process, and think of it as, okay, let's see how this person acts when they have their, hand up to their face like it's a phone, versus the prep that they're doing in advance and how they're thinking about that. I really like that.
Exactly. All
right, so let's move on from hiring. And let's say, once you've made your decision, I imagine there's always a little bit of sculpting required. A, to make it work for your team, or, B, just those nuances. So, for example, like you mentioned, you might bring on someone who is familiar with CMSs in general, maybe not specifically Drupal, maybe not even WordPress, maybe something proprietary. And, you kind of need to, quote unquote, baptize them into the way things work. But also, I think you're a pretty strong proponent of just continuous improvement, personal growth,
Absolutely.
Iteration over iteration. So I thought I'd ask you about nurturing your team. So, like, how do you help your team grow and expand their knowledge and learn?
That's a great question. I think it starts with monthly one-on-ones, right? Making sure that we're touching base on a regular basis, with each team member. So I meet with each project manager just to see how things are going, kind of check in on some of our our goals that we've set for them. Each time we do like an annual or regular performance assessment, we set goals that we want them to achieve, and that's a collaborative process with them. So just kind of checking in and see how they're doing on that. What assistance do they need? Another thing that I actually think is interesting is I talked about our kind of like our cross-functional teams, right, earlier. Mm-hmm. But we also have like departmental groups that we call guilds. So like we got a PM. Okay. Yeah, we got a PM guild. And so our PM guild meets twice a month for an hour to get together and just kind of like talk about different things. Like, hey, what's new? What have you learned recently? What are you working on? What challenges have you encountered? And it gives them the ability to kind of just share knowledge with one another and kind of, help each other sharpen their skills a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that I really like is we have a professional growth program. We call it PG time. And, so everybody gets an allotment of PG time, and it's similar to PTO, right? So just like you're requesting time off for vacation, you request PG time. So we have a tool that you go in, you request the day or whatever it is and say like, hey, I want to take a day off because I want to attend this class or I want to go to this conference. And it then gets sent to your manager. Your manager has to review and approve it. And most of them get approved. But of course we want to make sure that they're using that time to grow their skills as a project manager, or that it's dedicated towards something that we think makes the most sense for that individual. But then once that's approved, that goes on the calendar. You're out of office. Like, we treat it like PTO as well. Like, you can't just say like, oh man, sorry, can you move your PG time because client X or client Y? Nope. We just we don't tell the clients that it's PG time, because then they're going to be like, well, who cares? Get them back on this project. No, we just like, that person they're not available. They're off today. So, and that ensures that they're able to, give it the time and attention and focus that it truly deserves.
In terms of just professional growth and personal growth, I guess, is there anything that if they come to you with asking for recommendations, is there something that you recommend to your team members, especially those who want to take on more complex projects and they really want to scale up in digital?
Yeah, take advantage of the community, right? The digitalprojectmanager.com. There's also like local groups. As you mentioned earlier, I help co-organize and run the Boston DPM group, meetup group. And we meet once a month, second Tuesday of the month. And we've had so many amazing visiting speakers. And the thing that I love about it is we're not always just talking about project management. We've covered a number of different topics. We had a great talk on web accessibility. We had a really cool talk on, analytics and measurement. And the woman who presented, she showed us all these really cool, like Google's Data Studio dashboards that she creates, and why she's choosing these metrics for measuring success. So like, there's a really good opportunity there to learn about, like, again, all things digital, all things technology, and to help skill yourself up. So like, if it's the Boston group, or if it's some other meetup group, or maybe it's like you want to join a Drupal meetup group or something like that, so you can learn a little bit about the tools and the platforms that your team is using on a day-to-day basis. I think that's a great opportunity to kind of skill up.
I really like that sort of notion of, getting outside your comfort zone, to kind of immerse yourself in some of the peripheral things that we need to know as digital project managers, like a Drupal meetup group. Like, I think that's a fantastic idea, One sort of last tough final question. When do you know it's just not the right fit? You've made a bit of a mishire. How do you know, and what kind of drives your decision to part ways with team members?
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. And it's a good question. I feel like I was probably wait too long on this one, because we're all trying to be the eternal optimists. But honestly, just when I see somebody not able to grow, somebody who is not kind of leveling up on a, skills from a skills perspective on the technology side of things. At Oomph, we want people to be a little bit more technical on the PM side, right? And so it made me think of this really great post I read from Patrice Embry, about, being the one who takes, are you a note taker, basically? And, what I got out of it was that, you don't, as a PM, you're more than that, right? She compared like a project manager with like an admin or an administrative assistant, right? Mm-hmm. The admin is and there's nothing wrong with being an admin, right? But setting meetings, sending out agendas, taking notes, distributing meeting notes, and so on and so forth. Like, we're looking for more than just admins, right? So be more than that. Just don't just be the one who takes the notes. Be somebody who drives and leads the conversation. And if you're unable to do that within a reasonable amount of time, then you're probably not the right fit at Oomph. And that's okay. You're just not the right fit for us. And so we're going to have to let you go. It's a challenge now more than ever, because in the past, most of our organization was in Providence. We've since started, hiring and become more of a distributed company. But in the past, it was easy to just like pop into a conference room and be like, I'm auditing your class today, right? Right. Like, I'm just going to sit down and listen to you and see how you do. I can't do that anymore unless I just like very conspicuously show up on a Zoom meeting, and then people are like, who's this guy that we've never met before, right? In which case it's difficult to see how the PMs are doing. So that's where I need to rely upon feedback from other people, because again, I'm not working on these projects, or I literally do need to just schedule some times to just be like, hey, I just jumping in and just wanted to say hi and introduce myself to you, client, for no reason in particular. So that has made this a bit more challenging. So note to people, if you work at Zoom, please find a way to allow people to do anonymous listening. I know that sounds terrible. It sounds horrible, but like, you're killing my ability to manage people remotely.
That's true. It's one of the things that's missing from that virtual experience, which is in and of itself a whole nother topic for sure. Listen, Matt, these insights on hiring strong DPMs that can grow into becoming great project leaders are all really, really super valuable. What advice would you give to a hiring manager who's just starting to write a job description for a DPM role?
Know what's most important to you and to your team. I mean, is it a platform? Like, is that the most important thing? I mean, is it not the platform? Is it more about your note-taking skills? Just know what's most important to you, and what's going to be most important to the other team members. Maybe ask them, like, talk to your developers, talk to your designers, ask them what are the things that would make their lives easier. Not that like that's our job to make people's lives easier. Well, it kind of is, I guess, right? I mean, just get their feedback and get their buy-in. And the other thing that I would say is, if possible, try to involve them in the hiring process if you can. Like, even not saying that like you have to have them be on the screenings or like be in the interviews or whatnot, but like, if you think you might make a hire and it's gonna be somebody that people are working with, why not just like let them talk to this person, do a quick intro and just ask them, hey, what'd you think of that person? I don't know. I just think it's a way to show respect for your other team members. And so, yeah.
100%. I mean, yeah, they are going to be working with them. I like that. How about for job seekers? So for job seekers looking for digital project management roles, what's the most important thing to remember when you're positioning your skills, technical or otherwise?
Yeah, if you don't know it, don't make it up. Definitely. And again, like, I think don't just, again, if you can not just say that you do things, but show that you've been able to do things, those accomplishment statements that we talked about, I think that is really going to help the hiring managers see you as somebody that stands out as different. Like, don't just say that you worked on a WordPress project. Don't just say that you built a Drupal project. Add some details in there that are going to make it seem like it's a little bit impressive. Like somebody's so that somebody's going to say like, "Oh, okay, wow, yeah, that's pretty complex. Like, that's really cool. You must have to be fairly technical and skilled to have been able to manage a project like that. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Listen, Matt, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great having you on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's been awesome being with you. Thank you so much for having me and chatting. And if anybody hears this and they want to connect and chat me up a little bit more, reach out to me, and I'd love to talk more about this topic.
So what do you guys think? What are your hacks, tips, and tricks for seeking out good talent? What works? What doesn't? If you're a job seeker, what do you wish hiring managers would say that they never ever say? Tell us a story. What was the impact of hiring the wrong candidate for a technical role? What jobs have you interviewed for that really put you through the ringer when it came to technical knowledge? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to learn more and get ahead in your work, come and join our tribe with DPM membership. Head to thedigitalprojectmanager.com/membership to get access to our experts forum, mastermind mentorship groups, workshops, live mentorship sessions, templates, and more. And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe or stay in touch at thedigitalprojectmanager.com. And until next time, thanks for listening.